Medium format cameras have a certain reputation as unwieldy and expensive, but Fujifilm has been trying to change that with models like the GFX100 II that look and feel more normal. The company's new GFX100 II continues that by squeezing a big 100 megapixel sensor into a regular sized body. It does things we've never seen in a medium format camera, like 8K video and relatively fast 8 frame per second bursts. You also get the niceties you'd expect in a premium camera, like a very high resolution viewfinder, in-body stabilization, and more. There are a couple of odd compromises, however. Quality drops when shooting raw bursts, and Fujifilm doesn't really disclose that fact to buyers. There are a few other weird things as well, especially around video, but does any of that really matter for potential buyers? I went with 2 pro photographers to London to find out. The original X100 is a big slab of a camera weighing over 3 pounds with a viewfinder. The X100 II is way more manageable at 2.27 pounds, the same as Panasonic's full-frame S1. You're still likely to be carrying more weight though, as GFX lenses are quite big and heavy. The GFX100 II also feels and looks like a full-frame camera. It has a modern control layout with a pair of control dials, a mode dial, a joystick, 14 buttons, and a movie photo switch. The rear display tilts up, down, and to the side, but doesn't flip out, with a high 2.36 million dot resolution and enough brightness to use in sunlight. The viewfinder, meanwhile, is one of the best available, with 9.36 million dots and 100% magnification, so you're getting a one-to-one view through the lens. Handling is great thanks to the well-placed controls and large grip. The top display, which stays on even when the camera is switched off, shows all the main settings at a glance. I'm not a huge fan of Fujifilm's menu system as it lacks intuitiveness, but it's fine once you get used to it. As with other recent high-end cameras, you get both an SD UHS 2 and a much faster CF Express B card slot. The latter is pretty much required for fast burst shooting, as I'll discuss soon. Battery life is solid with up to 540 shots on a charge, or about an hour of 8K 30p or 4K 60p recording. The GFX100 II is the fastest medium format camera to date. You can fire bursts at up to 8 frames per second with a mechanical shutter enabled and capture about 300 lossless raw frames before the buffer fills. That's about 36 gigabytes of data, so it requires a fast CF Express card. The autofocus wasn't a strong point on the GFX, but it's much improved on this model. The large majority of shots in our burst testing were in focus, though it becomes less accurate when the subject is close to the camera. This isn't a sports camera, obviously, but it still has the best AF I've seen on any medium format camera. Face and eye detection has also improved, usually locking onto the eye and not, say, the eyebrow as before. Fujifilm also introduced subject detection from recent models, so it now locks onto animals, birds, automobiles, motorcycles, bikes, airplanes, and trains. The GFX100 II has a new 5-axis stabilization system with up to 8 stops of shake reduction compared to 5.5 stops before. This is very useful for portraits and scenics, letting you shoot down to a quarter second or slower and blur water or people while keeping the background sharp. Rolling shutter was pretty abysmal on the original model and isn't much better here. If you're taking street photos and want to remain silent, it's fine if the subject doesn't move much. For anything else, use the mechanical shutter to avoid some bad skewing. Image quality is this camera's forte, except for one thing I'll get to in a second. Naturally, photos are pin sharp thanks to the 102 megapixel sensor, and with 16 bits of color depth in RAW mode. Dynamic range is outstanding, right up there with Sony and Nikon. All of that makes it ideal for portraits and landscapes, on top of chores like photo or art preservation. The GFX100 II now goes down to ISO 80 instead of 100 to further boost dynamic range. All of that allows photographers to get creative with raw photos or tease detail out of highlights and shadows. It's not bad at high ISOs either, thanks to the backside illumination and dual gain design. There's very little noise visible at ISO 6400, and photos are usable up to ISO 12800 if exposure is correct. The medium format sensor offers incredibly shallow depth of field if you need that for portrait shooting. Combined with a fast lens like the 80mm f1.7, it allows for incredible bokeh and subject separation. If you're shooting JPEGs, it delivers sharp, color-accurate images right out of the camera. That's ideal for previews or folks who want to use Fujifilm's impressive film simulation modes. For the GFX100 II, Fujifilm introduced a new one called Reala Ace that's based directly on one of its negative films. It has a punchy, saturated, and slightly nostalgic feel that has become one of my new favorites. There is one quality issue. The GFX100 II drops from 16 to effectively less than 14 bits of color depth when shooting 8 frame per second bursts. That in itself isn't a huge problem, but Fujifilm has been less than forthright about how it markets this, which has rubbed some pro photographers the wrong way. At the risk of repeating myself, the GFX100 II is Fujifilm's best medium format camera so far for video as well. It has a host of new video modes, most notably 8K 30p. It also offers 6K, 4K 60p, and 1080p at 240 frames per second. All of those formats can be captured in 12-bit ProRes along with 10-bit H.265 formats. You get access to Fujifilm's excellent F-Log2 capture that boosts dynamic range. There are some considerable compromises. 8K is captured with a 1.53 times crop, reducing the effective sensor size to less than full frame. Other resolutions use the full sensor width, but pixel binning reduces sharpness. Rolling shutter is also an issue at 8K, so you'll want to be sure not to move the camera much when using that mode. It's much reduced at 4K resolutions, despite using the full sensor width, likely due to the pixel binning. All that aside, video from the GFX100 II has a different quality than I've seen from most mirrorless cameras. The larger sensor makes it very cinematic, especially with some of Fujifilm's prime lenses. And the 8K video is extremely sharp when downsampled to 4K in DaVinci Resolve. Realistically though, video is more of a nice-to-have feature for occasional use, as the majority of buyers will certainly not be using it for that. So how does the GFX100 II measure up? Nathaniel spent the most time with the camera, so let's give him the final word.
Ce qu'il fallait voir surtout, c'était l'évolution par rapport au GFX100 II, au niveau de l'autofocus. On est au studio, on travaille sur du Sony, on est loin d'être au niveau encore du Sony, mais c'est vrai que c'est beaucoup mieux. C'est pas fait pour du sport, c'est pas non plus une rafale qui est très forte. Pour moi, c'est plutôt pour du studio, pour du portrait, pour une image composée. Sur certains reportages, peut-être que par exemple sur des reportages mariage, si vraiment on a besoin d'une plage dynamique importante, l'avantage d'avoir un moyen format, normalement, c'est à ce niveau-là.
Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, please hit like and subscribe. And for more on technology, check out Engadget.com.